Hello and welcome back, everyone. Flavor Friday, which of course is synonymous with Happy Friday. Today we are doing Tinto flavor number 4, which is going to be detailing the flavor of Mali. And this is very exciting because I actually don't know a lot about Mali, other than it was the richest, or Mansa Musa, the ruler of Mali, was the richest man ever recorded in history as far as I know. Just absolute gobs of cash, and I am anticipating that to some extent this flavor is realized or portrayed in this game slash Tinto flavor that we're seeing, because Mansa Musa was alive during this time period, as far as I remember, which isn't a lot, because, again, not the best in terms of this time period, but we're going to explore it together. We're going to drink down the sauce, and so without further ado, let's jump in. Hello and welcome one more week to Tinto Flavor, the Happy Fridays, where we look at the flavorful content for the super secret Project Caesar, or if you'd like to say it, Project Teaser. This is, again, we're happy for the Happy Friday, Pavia, but you do need to capitalize it as it is a holiday. Okay, before we start, I want to share with you we have a new job opening in Paradox Tinto. So if you're looking for a job at Paradox Tinto, you could take a look at this. As far as I recall, I do remember seeing something in some post or something about them needing someone for a community manager. And so if you're interested, you could feel free to take that out or check that out. Today, we will be traveling throughout the Sahara towards Sahel, where the Emperor of Mali stands, ruled by the infamous Mansa Musa. Infamous, don't you mean famous? We love him. The mighty Mansa Musa Keita of Mali astonished the world 1 decade ago when he performed the Hajj pilgrimage to Mecca. Such an event was recorded by the chroniclers and chanted by the minstrels, as it served to establish his fame as the richest man as he spread his prodigality. Oh, bro, that's a word? That's a sweet word. Gifting zakah, almsgiving, gold wherever his long and luxurious courtly caravan passed by. The display of splendor might have reflected the richness of the Malian lands after its empire expanded and consolidated under the Keita dynasty. However, one day Mansa Musa will pass away, and his successors will not find it so easy to rule over the diverse holdings. I'm actually very excited for the prospect of, with the timeline being shifted back 90 years from Europa Universalis 4 to Project Teaser, which of course is the official release name of the game, with the timeline shifted back 90 years, I'm actually really excited to see what you can maybe try and cook up in places like Mali, because you have a little bit more of an open timeline before European dominance. So that's going to be interesting to see, but we do see Mansa Musa. He's 57 right now. He's got some stats. Notably, 90 administration, that seems high, but the mighty Mansa Musa is still ruling Mali in 1337. We don't know exactly when he died, so we have decided to have him as the ruler at the start of the game. As usual, please consider the 2D, this is, work in progress placeholder thing. Okay, and here are the lands of Mali. We see the Mali Empire. Ooh, this is going to be so fun to play. This is, normally Africa doesn't have particularly strong starts in really many of the games, except for Imperator, where of course Carthage, North Africa, but that's really sub-Saharan Africa doesn't have any particularly strong starts, is maybe a more accurate kind of statement. But I think that if the Mali Empire, I think Mali Empire is probably going to be a pretty strong start, so this is really exciting for the people who like to play in Africa. We do know some Sokoto enjoyers and some Ethiopia enjoyers. Shout out to you guys. Some more fun camera rotations this week, hell yeah. Today with the flat map mode on again. Okay. Mali starts with one vassal, which is Jollof. It sounds good enough. It will show us their succession law, religion, Gino, not familiar with that religion. Their capital is Linguere. Urban location is 1. That seems rather low. Population of 200,000. That does seem pretty high, and a tax base. And they are an overlord, Mali Empire. They have +3 opinion, etc. We see some of the UI. Let's take a look at the government-related features of Mali, which can be checked in the estate windows below. We see the crown power is only 16%. The Umara, which is the nobility, I assume, is 43%. The Ulama, which is the religious folk, is 20%. The Wangara, which is the burghers, is 11%, and the commoners, which is the commoners, is at 8%, we see, and we also see some estates, things that have been granted them. There is one starting government reform for Mali, the Mandan Kurufa, sorry for pronunciations, and we will be receiving monthly progress towards decentralization, which is probably not going to be a good modifier, but we will be receiving cultural tradition, and if I could recall values, that does seem like a really large value. I think we've seen stuff like 0.1 in some spots. My memory might be mistaken, but if 0.1 is kind of part of the course we've seen quite a bit of, 0.5 is quite a lot. And so then we will also see stability decay, and the Manda Kufa, also known as the Mandan Federation, is the government of the Empire Mali. Original started as the 12 Doors, which were the personal possessions of Mansa. This network of alliances and conquered lands have become core government of the state. Okay. You might also notice that all estates start with a privilege with the same icon. I did notice that. If we scroll up, you can see it all off to the left, with the exception of the Crown Lands, which is, of course, not an estate. It's a similar one made to portray the religious diversity of Mali, a country ruled largely by Mandi-speaking Sunni people, but with a fragmented by tolerant society. Shout out to tolerance. We see plus 5% happiness, plus 50% power. Conversion of nobles is blocked. That is an interesting sort of modifier. We're blocking the conversion of nobles. Ostensibly they're Sunni, but we accept a whole bunch of people, so this is okay. And then we see religions in the Mali Empire underneath here. Sunnism is at 61%, and then we see several other, religions that we're not going to try and pronounce, and that they occupy around 40%, which is quite religiously diverse. The second screenshot comes from a tooltip on the religious panels and shows the religious distribution of the country. Please note that we've already done the pagan split, but we haven't yet incorporated the feedback from the West African Tinto maps, nor reviewed starting population. Alright, well, fair enough. There are also a couple unique privileges for the Umara, the nobility of the country, that may be available later after an event triggers. We see the Office of Farima Sura, which is going to give plus 5% happiness and quite a bit of power. The monthly progress towards aristocracy 0.05, we're not really sure which ones of these are going to be good and which ones of these are going to be bad, but it does paint a picture for what we will be receiving, in terms of power base in Mali. We get build gravel road cost minus 25%, build paved road cost minus 25%, and modern road the same, and trade efficiency plus 0.5%. This seems quite strong with the minus road cost. We know that the road cost will increase market access, and increasing market access makes it easier for you to reach the goods, but with Mali you probably have control over most of your own market, so it's not like you are seizing goods access from other people in your market, unless these people down to the south are inside of your market, in which case maybe this is the case. Maybe you have two markets, but market access allows you to guarantee you having the first access to goods, but I think that there's also going to be, it also propagates control, if I recall correctly, and so this does seem like a nice base by which to expand, a country that is going to be, not necessarily militarily, but if you establish more control in this way, by building a bunch of roads, then you can establish a much more far-flung empire and maintain control of it. We see the Office of Sankar Zuma, which doesn't give happiness, it gives plus 50% power. We see more progress towards aristocracy, and it gives market attraction and monthly rebel growth. It is a prestigious office granted to the Umara by the highest authority in the land. Its role, much like the Farima Sura, revolves around exercising authority along all the trade routes along the southern border. Well, this is an interesting one where we see market attraction, and so in this way, if we could pull these guys into our market, which it seems to be very much the case, these guys to the south, and then we develop more market access, we will get priority on the goods, and that will be good for us. But also, if they have luxuries, stuff like ivory, I don't know exactly what luxuries are in the region, we will be able to use it and export it and these types of things and make use of trade. Mali also starts with a couple of unique policies enacted. The first for the distribution of power estate law, the other for the levy law for military law. Levy law, military law. That seems like there's too many laws in there. We see levy law, we see military law, and we see Jude law, and one of them's the most handsome, which is, of course, the military law. We see Gibra, which is a policy which gives a monthly progress towards decentralization. We are seeing more and more of this decentralization modifier, which is not exactly something we're enthused about, but we saw a pretty good trade-off before. Noble estate satisfaction equilibrium plus 2.5%. That seems good. Noble's power. Interesting that it's in here. I guess this is because this is a policy, not a privilege. But okay, we see plus 25% Noble's power. A little bit of, it feels different in the UI than the power we see here. We see added accepted culture cost minus 20% and cultural capacity plus 1 for a little bit of tolerance. This is a policy of the distribution of power law. It takes a few days to implement, and it's the deliberative assembly of Mali, and is defined in the Malian constitution. The Korukan Foga, the Umara, represent the many clans in our state and check the power of the ruling Mansa. You trying to check Mansa Musa? You crazy girl. Here we see Tanta Jonta Niworo. Monthly progress towards quality is an interesting one. We see noble estate satisfaction equilibrium plus extra levy size, noble's power. Interesting to see something that gives extra levy size and progress towards quality, but we will have a more powerful army and a higher quality army. Man, this is already, like, this is tickling my fancy in terms of seeing all these modifiers. These are the types of modifiers I generally like to play with. Quality, trade power, these types of things. The army of the empire in its early days was made out of 16 clans whose leaders promised to protect the great Mansa and the Malian state. Translated as the 16 slaves that carry the bow, the Tanta John Ta Ni Waro are the high nobility of the country and serve as commanders of the Malian cavalry. Very interesting. We see some flavor, some stuff that is tied into, the way that they do things. Noble's power and levies, I think, are the big takeaways there. Mali also starts with 3 work of arts. We see Sankor Madrasa, which is in Timbuktu, which this is a building. We see, shout out to everyone who's been playing Victoria 3 for a hot minute, the Great Mosque of Jinneh, which is, and was, or it no longer is, but on release, it did make Eastern Mali the best state in all of Victoria 3 because it gave 20% education access to everyone, to your entire country. You had to build it. It's not apparent on the map at game start. You can only build it. The AI never builds it, but it is an insane building, the Mosque of Jinneh. And we see the Jingureber Mosque, which is in Timbuktu. Now let's take a look at some of the unique advances. We will see a tech here in the Age of Traditions that unlocks Amanda Kurufa. The Kuruforkanvoga is the very basic construction of the Mali, every aspect of life, from the single family and life in the villages, all the way back to the sovereign and the Mansa. We don't see... This unlocks the government reform. Did we already take a look at the government reform? This one here gets unlocked, where we receive that hefty cultural tradition and progress towards decentralization in exchange. We see a gold of Boer, which is unlocked in the Age of Renaissance. A monthly inflation, tamp that down. That will likely be a very significant problem for Mali, as they have a lot of gold. Getting things to curb the inflation are likely to be good, and extra gold output. The twin gold fields at Bambouk and Boer are renowned for the largest gold deposits anyone has ever heard of, and they are ours. Boer's gold mines have produced fantastic wealth that famously destabilized the entire economy of Egypt through inflation when Mansa Musa visited there. That's such an insane baller line. I collapsed a country's economy when I visited because I was just so damn rich. You inject so much money into the economy that people no longer want to work. They're just like, I've already gotten paid. I've already got that bag. Mansa Musa gave it to me. And so our economy, though, is used to a constant influx of gold and is more difficult to inflate. This seems Very strong. Mali is famous for its gold exports, yeah. Yeah, can you imagine? You have this modifier, right? And then you do well enough, you colonize the New World, and then you don't pull a Spain and collapse your entire, dynasty because you just imported too much Mexican gold because you have experience. You're like, I've seen this before, dog. We know how to handle this. Mali has a bunch of unique units also. We see these guys, which we're going to try and pronounce the name, the Mandakalu infantry and horsemen. Yep, it's the same one for each of these. These levies are the backbone of the Malian military. The free men of the empire are called to arms in times of war. It is a great honor for them to participate in these battles with their own weapons. Shout out to bringing your own weapons. We don't quite have our finger on the pulse in terms of what is going to be good, other than, you see kind of a lot of ones, generally speaking. I think this is kind of a little bit of good speed and initiative. The infantry are the background of the Malian military and made of the Huron, the free commanders of Mali. Equipped with javelins and bows and poison arrows, the infantry are a formidable force to be reckoned with. Alright, maybe we missed that. They have a normal combat power and normal looking frontage, but maybe the use of bows is reflected in their initiative and some of these stats, and those stats are higher. Can gain experience in order to be promoted to Ferrari infantry. After the advanced Ferrari corps has been researched, experience is shared by all Mande Kalu units. 1 battles grant plus 15, lost battles grant plus 5, experience per participating unit. Here we see the horseman here, which is going to have much more combat power, the same frontage, and is going to have also quite a bit of movement speed and combat speed. Not as much combat speed or as initiative as the infantry, so I think that this is getting some benefits from being skirmish-oriented. We will see inputs of leather, cloth, horses, and weaponry, kind of normal-looking fare, I think, although we do see combat performance extra in grasslands and minus 10% in a bunch, and I don't think we saw that here, so we do see a little bit more specialization, but this makes sense. It's hard to deploy horses in certain terrain. The archers of Argencourt know, or more importantly, the knights at Argencourt knew. The Mandekalu horsemen are the additional support of the Malian military. These Hurons, the free commoners of Mali, received their mount and equipment from Tondigi and the Mansa. Charging into battle with the lances and long swords, the Mandekalu horsemen projected the power of the Musa or Mansa Musa in the furthest corners of the empire. Can gain experience. I think that this text is exactly the same, but we do get to get upgraded to the Ferrari infantry, which we do see a little bit here. You may note the description of the 2 levy units refers to the Ferrari corps, which has the following advance. Cavalry power, which is the following advance. Wait, we get an advance by fighting a bunch? Okay, that is interesting. We see cavalry power 5% and allows, we get to promote to these. Once we have the advance, we can allow Ferrari infantry and Ferrari cavalry, where we will see same combat power and frontage on this, but we will see 9 initiative. Looks like we lost a little bit of combat speed, but 9 initiative is more than 7. And the morale damage and strength damage taken, we see 10% and 5% there. And we see no modifiers up here, and even lower combat speed. So this is kind of a more elite-looking unit. The Ferrari are the elite corps of the Malian infantry, appointed from Umara and commoners alike. The Ferrari are known for their bravery and military experience. I'm not sure if they still are skirmishing and they still have, throwing weapons, or if that matters, but it does seem to be the initiative that they take up a lot. Also, the damage taken is reduced. Interesting that we don't see any combat power increase on them. Maybe the idea is to have a very consistent sort of combat power. We see the Ferrari cavalry, which is going to have less initiative as before. We see quite a bit of combat speed, a little bit more movement speed, and a bigger bonus in grasslands off of these guys, it looks like. And we see this morale and strength damage taken. I assume that the 33% and 20% are lower than the numbers we have here, if there are numbers. So yeah, they are lower, or you get more damage reduction on the cavalry, really not taking much morale or strength damage. The Ferrari are the elite corps of the Malian military, appointed from the Umara and commoners alike. I think that is the exact same flavor text, and so we'll stop reading. Another unique advance, the Kele Kou, which gives infantry power plus 10% and allows the Jono Auxiliary Regular Regiment. Very cool, we're getting auxiliaries on here. So we're getting several unique units, but infantry power, of course, seems like a very strong modifier. It seems like this will modify combat power, but not entirely sure if it modifies other stuff. The Kele Kun, or Warhead, are the commanders of the Kele Bolo, or the War Arm infantrymen fighting for the Empire. We're getting a commander unit. Unlike the Tondigi, the feudal lords of Mali, the Kele Kun are not necessary, and I apologize since I'm probably mispronouncing everything because I don't know how to pronounce the Malian stuff, are not necessarily part of the nobility. The Kele Kun have a Janao, slaves serving as carriers of weapons and equipment until their inclusion in the Sofa battalions. And so we see the auxiliary here, which is going to consume tools, a little bit of copper, and a lot of kind of weird stuff. Medicaments and salt, notably, are going to be consumed. You know, shout out to the ambulance. That's a little like an auxiliary we heard outside. But we see not much combat power expected to see. Extra morale damage taken expected to see. I think movement speed is probably going to be one of the more critical stuff, but we do see huge amount of food storage. And so you can have these guys in the back lines, and you can even have them automatically, as we learned about automated sort of movement. You can have these guys automatically supplying armies and operating behind the lines to bring stuff to the armies. They are slaves who accompany the Kele Keun and their soldiers and are carriers of military equipment. Shout out. Finally, another military advances unlocks one more unit. Wow, another unit and two more buildings. We see it locked in the Age of Renaissance, so a lot of these are going to be earlier age on the units, which of course makes sense because Mali collapsed, right? It's not around today. Although collapsed maybe means colonized. Oof, the truth hurts. Soviet infantrymen, which also unlocks a few buildings like barracks and stockades. Originally, all soldiers in the Kele Bolo levies are Horan or freemen, but in the latest development of the Malian Empire forces the inclusion of Jano or slaves to serve in the army as fighters instead of weapon carriers. These slave warriors would then be known as the Sofa, protecting as garrison forces in the Malian fortifications. Interesting. So they didn't bring them to battle, they had them defend fortifications. We see maximum strength 200. That is a bit interesting because I think every other unit we've seen has been maximum strength of 1,000. I suppose the auxiliaries here had 100, so this is 200. Frontage unit per weight. It seems that the stats are not especially high, and kind of a normal-looking fare for military equipment. They were trained in the art of wars. They could serve at the state, although they received their weapons from the Huron, the free men of Mali. It is them who risk their lives in combat. Interesting. And then we see this barracks, a unique building, which is going to give monthly manpower. It may build Sofa units, can recruit regiments here. And so, interesting. I wonder if these will... Maximum strength 200 seems to be, like, kind of the more interesting factor. I wonder if that makes them strategically easier to deploy in certain locations as defensive armies. They did say guarding the barracks or fortifications. But okay, we will see that this building can be built. It's got masonry as one of the inputs. Weaponry is one of the inputs, which is a little slightly curious, but definitely makes sense. And then they have a production method, which seems to cost all of this as well. In many ways, the Sofa barracks is identical to other types of barracks. However, this military building is operated by slave soldiers and uses resources native to the Sahel region. That is a little bit of interesting text. That each kind of area is going to probably have barracks that use inputs more native to their region. Makes a ton of sense and is definitely going to be nice on that front. So perhaps we would see less leather and more cloth in other regions or something like this, where you have more or less of a certain type of good. We see stockades, which is going to give garrison size, minus unrest, additional fort level, and these guys are going to be guarded by the Sofa. The Sofa stockade is in many aspects identical to normal stockades. However, these fortifications are operated by slave soldiers and are made of material native to the Sahel region. So is the material the main difference, or is the fact that they're employing slaves going to be of significant impact? A little bit interesting. But okay, let's take a now look at the narrative content. This event will trigger while Mansa Musa is still alive as an announcement of potentially harsh time to come. The zenith of the Malian Empire. No, not our decline. We're playing as Mali. We haven't even reached it. We're going to become a colonial power and use our gold bonus in Mexico. During the reign of Mansa Musa Keita, the Malian Empire reached its pinnacle of its power in West Africa. Truly blessed by Allah, mashallah, the great Mansa has ruled Mali with strength and wisdom, and even has shown great wealth of the empire to the rest of his world during his Hajj. However, the wheel of fortune cannot turn forever in our favor. Crown Prince Magan Keita has never been of great significance, certainly not as great as the loud car outside, and the empire is now facing societal issues with so many diverse cultures present in the state. Only time will tell what happens to the Malian Empire. And here we see, may these prospering times have no end. Why would you choose anything other than that? But we say gain legitimacy, prestige, gold, and Mali might become subject to the decline of Mali disaster. No! 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 Alright. If the legitimacy or stability is too low while a weak ruler is in power. So that just means we have to keep our legitimacy and stability high, and unless we have Mansa Musa, then it doesn't matter. The disaster that may end up triggering for your country, a decline of Mali, where we will see estate satisfaction equilibrium minus 50%. That seems real bad. Same with stability decay, monthly legitimacy. All this seems really awful. And then we will see we have to be at peace. We have to have a total population greater and greater than 90 legitimacy, 15 stability, have a ruler. It seems like this is a bit rough. Weak rulership, civil wars, and the rise of the external threats and internal stagnation are the great challenges the Malian Empire has to face. Maybe there was something to do with inflation too, but, you know, yeah. The stability and security of the empire is at peril, and only a strong hand can lead the state to a former glory. Uh-oh. We don't like that. We don't like the sound of that. That sounds like authoritarianism. We get a fragmented return, where we will see many within our ranks seem to believe that a great nation is falling apart. Religious revolts of prospecting pretenders and harsh weather patterns have led many speculating that our end is nigh. Adding salt to the wounds, delicious. Now many of our subjects in our eastern, I can't read this with sunglasses on, in eastern territories demand their complete independence from authority after kicking out local administrators and putting the crown representatives to the sword. Yikes. Yikes. This allows you to start playing as Songhai instead of Mali if you select the third option. Interesting. So we do have a way to get to Songhai for those of you who like Songhai in Europa Universalis 4. If you overcome the disaster, you get a reward in terms of prestige, stability, etc. This is our very personal favorite reward. We definitely are a huge fan of etc. We need to do some balance tweaks on it, so there might be more. My favorite is etc. etc. Nonetheless, besides the disaster, you can also get nicer events while playing as Mali, such as some about the development of Timbuktu. Bolstering Timbuktu, Mansa Musa Keita in previous years had invested in the town of Timbuktu. Other nations seem fascinated by the growth of the town and are regularly visiting it. Perhaps we could aid it even more and show our neighbors the might of Mali, and we get FLAVOUR Mali .2a, which is our personal favorite, kind of thing for an event, where we will move 15% away from devastation and towards prosperity, gain a bunch of development, gain a bunch of prestige, and lose some gold. But we got plenty of that. Mansa Musa time. And that's all for today. I hope you enjoyed it. We did. Next week we'll travel back to Europe, to the lands of Aragon, which will be very exciting. Not as exciting as this one, though, unless it's more exciting. It's likely to not be the same level of exciting, but I do think the idea of a Mali run does sound like a good bit of fun. A bit of a what-if scenario. What if Mali never collapsed? Would it be able to compete with European powers? You know, I think that this is a start date that in particular is really nice for envisioning and thinking about what would have happened then. You know, the 90 years before the kind of start of Europa Universalis 4, I think leaves a little bit more ambiguity regarding the power level of different nations, and so it's not so European focused. Although EU4 is not anywhere near as European focused as like Victoria 3. Victoria 3, you're kind of locked in on Europe, or you're just kind of playing a country that is going to be a lot weaker, where the idea of developing a colonial empire out of Mali, you know, dominating South America, and projecting power, you know, throughout the entire African continent. This does sound like a bit of fun, you know, and don't get to play a strong power in Africa so much unless it's North Africa and you're playing Carthage and you're trying to restore the timeline. And so this has been delightful. But I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, please feel free to like, comment, subscribe, do the YouTube algorithm thing. And other than that, have a Flavor Friday.